Hello there, studio teacher friends. Welcome to the Beyond Measure podcast, your weekly dose of teacher camaraderie. I am Christina Whitlock, a teacher, writer, speaker, and I'm here to hang out with you on your own schedule and help you show up for your students with as much of your own unique teacher magic as possible. After all, just because we're independent music teachers, it doesn't mean our work has to be done alone, does it? And with that said, let's get on with the show. You are listening to episode 199 of the Beyond Measure podcast. Let's get to it. A few weeks ago, I sent my email subscribers a reminder of a previous episode called The Upcoming Gift of January. Well, friends, January is no longer an upcoming gift. It's here. Cue the party horns. For the record, I still consider January a gift because for me, there is nothing better than the fresh start offered by a new calendar year. This is a great time to explore new systems and ideas. Most of us have been on a break from teaching for at least a week or two, and there is this undeniable energy that comes simply from not teaching. Even if you didn't particularly feel like you needed a break back in December, you did. We are all better off when we give our brain cells some time to chill out and regenerate. Okay, maybe that's not scientifically what's actually happening in December, I don't know, but it sure feels like it to me. When I refer to the gift of January, I often remind teachers that it's a great time to communicate new or revised policies. I'm not even talking about the big stuff, but I mean things like arrival procedures or hand washing protocol. It's a good time to remind parents of your sick policy and procedures for dangerous weather conditions. I talked more about this gift of January back in episode 104, so feel free to check that out if you missed it the first time or if you would like a refresher. Today, though, I wanted to take a different spin on the same idea. I want to talk about how we communicate our boundaries, new or otherwise, with our studio families. Since we're in that magical time of year when most of us are trying to establish better habits, this seems like a topic ripe for the picking. Simply put, my friends, we have to make sure our actions are aligned with our words. It's one thing to spend our time crafting the policies that we want, but it's something else altogether to behave in alignment with those policies. Let me give you an example. For the longest time, I included a statement in my written policy that I was unavailable for studio matters on Sundays. I loved the idea of reserving Sundays for rest and for family and giving myself one day completely off of that constant stream of texts and emails. And I think, for me, that is still the right thing. But guess what else? I used to break my own rule all the time. I would casually text out reminders or catch up on emails or any number of things on Sunday afternoons. Or when a parent would text me, I would go ahead and text them right back. Again, there's nothing inherently wrong with communicating studio matters on Sundays, but it was definitely not in alignment with my official policy. And you know what they say about actions speaking louder than words? Well, it's still true. So even if I got a unicorn parent who joined my studio, one who actually read and committed to memory all of my expressed policies, eventually, after receiving multiple communications from me on Sundays, they would begin to disregard that boundary. So let's look at this scenario objectively. Given the situation, I have two reasonable courses of action. Either I decide the Sunday rule doesn't work and I remove it from my policy, Or I decide it really does matter to me and I commit to acting in alignment with my own policy. What is unreasonable is to continue expecting families to leave me alone on Sundays if I'm going to send them communications anyway. This is one of those times it's important to remember that studio relationships are a two-way street. I can't justifiably roll my eyes and complain about never getting a break from work because a parent texts me a question on a Sunday if I'm also going to turn around and text them a Sunday reminder 2 weeks from now. That doesn't add up. And if a parent calls me on a Sunday and I answer my phone and talk to them anyway, I'm just as much to blame as they are. Assuming this is a boundary that matters to me, I need to let that call go to voicemail. Then I can return the call first thing Monday morning, and I can say something like, "Hey, I hated to leave you waiting for my reply, but as I expressed in my studio policy, I don't deal with business on Sundays." In case it's not obvious, the Sunday thing is just one example. The same thing goes for anyone who wants to stop communicating with families after 8 p.m. or whatever your boundary is. Actions really do speak louder than words. So I want you to think about the studio parents you have who push your boundaries. To put it more bluntly, think about any studio parents you have who annoy you. This is a safe space. We can say that here. Do you have a studio parent who consistently overstays their welcome? Maybe they're your last lesson of the evening, and even though you like them, you just want them to leave so your workday can be over? You need to stop letting them stay. And look, if you're not strong enough to simply let them know you have other things to do, I'm not above asking my husband to call me from another room so I have a reason to excuse myself, or to set my oven timer to go off at just the right time. Whatever you need to do to stop yourself from behaving in a way that is out of alignment with your own personal boundaries. This is your reminder that when we make exceptions in our own behavior, we can't be frustrated and annoyed with studio families for taking advantage of us. We have to take responsibility for our own boundaries. And that's why this time of year is such a gift. Most of the people you encounter are trying to retrain their habits in one way or another, so let's make the most of that opportunity. If you happen to be one of those teachers, and I've been there, who says there is a late fee for late tuition payments, but you never actually enforce said fee, this is your chance. You either stop claiming there is a fee if you're not going to enforce it, or you start adding the late fee you already say is there. If you are one of those teachers, of which I am not, who say their students are expected to practice X number of minutes per day or they will be dismissed from the studio, you need to be ready to enforce that policy or to give it a serious tweak. And if you happen to be on the hunt for ideas related to tweaking practice expectations, I would strongly recommend checking out episode 51, which I lovingly called My Practice Manifesto. It's a good one. When all is said and done here today, I hope you give some serious thought to whether or not your teacher actions match your teacher words. When it comes to studio policies, I am currently in a season where I heartily believe less is more. If we want parents to read these things and really take their contents to heart, we owe it to them to be as clear and concise as possible. And that means cutting out anything that we are not willing to back up with our own actions. Even outside of our written policies, I hope you will think about whatever you consider to be annoyances in your studio. We've talked about chatty parents and late payments and communicating at weird hours, but there are so many things that fall under this umbrella of aggravating behavior. Whatever annoyance it is, I hope you'll take an objective look at the situation and decide what, if any, role your own actions are playing in the dynamic. It's not that I want you to become some rigid taskmaster, far from it. I just want to make sure that you are not contributing to your own unhappiness. Maybe you come to the conclusion that your named studio annoyance is completely out of your control. Well, that's helpful in its own right. You either care about keeping the studio family and choose to let it go, or you decide if your discomfort is worth parting ways over. Look, music teacher life isn't all sunshine and rainbows, I know that, but there really is no reason for us to be miserable, friends. And while I'm at it, since we're talking about New Year's systemizations and all, can I offer a game-changing suggestion? If you teach, 10 or more students, which most of you do, I would strongly consider putting some official office hours on your calendar every week. This is something I am trying to get back in the habit of doing. Sometimes we get overwhelmed at the fact that managing a larger studio requires so much communication and so much preparation. My non-teacher friends are always surprised by how frequently I receive communications from studio families throughout the week. If we do answer every text and email and phone call as they roll in, it will seem as though we are on the clock 24 hours a day. However, if you set aside some designated time to deal with communications, and you have the strength to actually wait to deal with studio matters until those allocated hours and not in real time, you might just find yourself feeling a whole lot better about the amount of hours you spend working. Plus, think about this. Do you ever get overwhelmed when it's time to write a studio-wide communication? Whether it's an email about upcoming events that month, or progress reports, or whatever. You know how those things always end up taking so much longer than you think they're supposed to? Part of that, for me anyway, is the fact that I rarely carve out specific time to deal with those kinds of communication. It's just something I cram into my usual routine, and that leaves me feeling panicked and behind and frustrated and all kinds of things I don't want to feel. By actively planning for 2 to 3 hours of designated admin time, I'm giving myself the opportunity to write some emails in advance or return texts during normal working hours. It's an incredible thought, right? I hope you'll give it some consideration this year. And hey, in case you're free on Monday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern Time here in the States, don't forget that that's when I host Monday Morning Power Hours for members of the Beyond Measure community. Power Hours are some of my most favorite things, and they would be perfect for some planned office hour time. We all log into a Zoom call, we quickly state our goal for the hour, then we mute our devices and get to work. At the end of the hour, we celebrate what we got done, or sometimes laugh at how sidetracked we got, and we're all better off for it. I know it sounds silly to some people, especially if you've never done a power hour, but I promise you, if focus is ever a struggle for you, co-working sessions like these are incredibly helpful to keep you on task. You currently get access to Power Hour with any paid level of membership in the Patreon community. So if you want some accountability to institute an office hour on Monday mornings, head to christinawhitlock.com/support and join the fun. So that's what I have for you today, friends. A little reminder to make sure that our actions align with our words. Let's wrap up with a toast. Studio teacher friends from all around the world, may we all remain mindful of the important roles we play in setting our own boundaries. I hope you are re-inspired to make sure your actions are aligned with your words, those words in your studio policies, as well as those annoyances you voice inside your own mind. Let's remember that actions do speak louder than words, and, as the incomparable Brené Brown reminds us, clear is kind. Clarity is kindness, so let's communicate clearly to our studio families. No mixed messages coming from us in 2025, right? Of course not. I'm raising my glass to you, my friends. Hear, hear. Thank you for hanging out with me today, teacher friends. Next week, we're celebrating a big one. 200 episodes next week. I can hardly believe it, but I'm just so grateful you're here as we figure life out together. I've linked a bunch of related episodes in today's show notes, so if you are looking for more to listen to while you put in those January hours at the gym, head to christinawhitlock.com/episode 199 to get more listening suggestions. I'll see you next week for episode 200 of Beyond Measure. Onward and upward together, my friends.